So the first question that I want to address is that everyone's looking at their layers panel and they're just overwhelmed with how much stuff and things are getting lost and you're starting to run out of naming conventions and things like that. So I want to talk about compositions a little bit more and how to use them to help you organize your work. So here's my main composition. It's SZ title score core skills surf zone. And you can see here my layers are pretty well organized. I only have like a TIFF here, an effect layer that's just giving me a little bit of a color overlay, yada yada yada. I've got one composition here. There's a composition right here in this panel too. And if you guys ever need another composition, by all means go ahead and make one. More often than not, projects have more than one composition. Okay, so a couple ways to do this. Just go up under composition and new composition. I'm just going to keep my settings all the same, keep my background color the same. Click OK, and you can see that it shows up here in my projects panel. Okay. Notice though that this composition also has its own timeline and its own layers panel. Okay, so if you ever need to build something, say it's a character animation or logo animation or something, go ahead and it might be a good idea to put it into a new composition. And then instead of building it on your main composition, just moving, it's like you're nesting one composition inside of another or one timeline inside of another. If I just go back to this composition right here, I can always put this composition right here in my layers panel and have it show up. So at 0 seconds, this layer, which is its own composition, is going to start playing whatever is in here. Okay, I'm going to actually do a really quick example of something like this. I'm just going to delete that and delete this out of my project panel. So I want to import, say, another version of this logo. I'm going to talk about that again really quick. So here's my original artwork. If I open up my layers panel here, you can see that each piece of art is on its own layer, named accordingly. And you're going to want to do that so that when you import your artwork into After Effects, that each layer becomes its own piece of art and it's really easy to organize. So I'm going to go back into After Effects. I'm just going to import that again to show you guys how to do that. Again, you just double click on the project panel here in this big blank area and it should show up. There we go. So on my desktop, I want to import this logo, which is this file right here. It's an AI file. This option right here, though, I don't want to import this as footage. I'm just going to click on this, and I'm going to import this as a composition and retain the layer sizes. Okay. So if I click Open, see what happens over here in my Projects panel. Not only does it give me a folder with all those layers inside of it named appropriately, so here's my layer name, and then the /, and then that's the name of my actual file. So if I click on that, you can see that that's the inner circle, the left board, the right board, so on and so forth. But furthermore, it's given me this composition right here with everything already inside of it. So if I double click on it, it'll just open up this composition for me. So now I've actually got all of these layers in its own composition, and I'm free to do whatever I want here. What I'm going to do, I'm going to jump back to my main composition, and I'm just going to put a copy of this out on my composition panel, right in my project here. It's not going to look fantastic, but so here it is. You can see that when my current time indicator isn't over top of this layer, which is right here, you can see that my composition ends right there. So if I scrub back, now you'll see it. It shows up. Of course it's not going to show up. It's still rendering, I think. There we go. So it goes away, comes back. Of course, this computer is having a conniption trying to register that. Anyways, so you can see here that I've actually got this new composition nested inside of my main composition. If I wanted to turn this off or I could animate this really easily. For argument's sake, let's say I had this closed. Just double click on the little composition icon. Just double clicking on that. Zoom back out. Opens up that composition so you can see your layers in your timeline. And I'm just going to do a really quick animation just so that you can see something happen, and it's almost proof that I'm not lying to you. I'm just going to change the scale of this surfboard. Okay, I'm going to make it bigger. Now, this was a problem that someone helped me address, which was really great. You notice that when I made this vector art bigger, if I zoom in here, ugh, it's pixelated. It's hard to see on the projector, but trust me, it's pixelated. It doesn't look very good. There's this button over here with it's the little sun. It's called continuously rasterize. If you turn that on, you can see how much sharper. I don't know if you guys saw that change. It became much sharper. So now, as you make your vector graphics bigger or smaller, they won't pixelate on you. I'm just going to do that, make that bigger. Step back to here. I'm going to add a keyframe by clicking on my watch. I'll go to 1 second, and I'm just going to adjust the size of it. Okay, so for 1 second, that surfboard's going to get bigger, and I'm going to turn that on so that its vector information stays and it doesn't get pixelated. And you'll see what happens here when I scrub my current time indicator. Of course, this thing is having a hard time with it. You can see that as I scrub my main timeline, it's also playing the timeline of this composition inside of my main composition. Does that make sense to you guys, that you're kind of nesting one composition inside of another? And so instead of having all these layers out here, you can kind of put scenes together or animate characters in a certain way or animate logos in a certain way, that kind of thing. So do you guys have any other questions about compositions or how you can kind of cut down on the amount of layers you've got in your main composition? And of course, you can just hide and show layers as you want by moving these up and down your timeline. You can see my current time indicator is at 8 frames. So when I scroll this over to 8 frames, you can see it. But when I scroll it away, it's not going to show up until 1 second. This computer needs more RAM. Yeah, and then of course at 6 seconds, it just disappears again. Okay,